You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. And we're very fortunate show to have interviews from the world's best athletes, sports build coaches, trainers, managers. We aim to bring Salford to the world and the world to Salford. We've had fascinating guests. One of the aims of the show is increase awareness and participation in sport. Also have international perspectives and perspectives around the country and the world, people with different roles in sport. But we're also very fortunate too to speak to some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields. It gives us an insight into their ideas in the field of psych and mental health too. So we've been very fortunate to have a really fascinating guest today. We have a really interesting guest. I'm sure we'll sort of find out more about what he does, his role, how he got there, and hopefully it inspires people to sort of an awareness of football, awareness of sport, and increase participation wherever you are. Sort of get out there and play sport, whatever level you're at. He's the first team manager at Farsley Celtic FC. Neil Ross, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thanks very much. Great to be involved.
Great to have you on board, Neil. Just sort of yourself, Neil. How did you sort of, for our listeners, get into management? How did you sort of get into sort of coaching and management yourself?
It sort of took on from my professional football career. So I played 12 years as a professional footballer, and then had to retire early through injury. So I retired at 27, and then decided to get into coaching from there, and then just run private football academies and different coaching sort of classes and stuff like that, and then sort of went more into the academy side of sort of non-league football clubs, and then sort of built from academy football into under 23s, then into the first team. Yeah.
And for yourself, Neil, I mean, obviously professional footballer, and 27, I suppose you could argue is probably the peak of one's career. I mean, we see players now sort of play well into their 30s. What was it like for you to sort of make that transition, to go from being a pro and then sort of having to sort of redirect towards sort of coaching? And
I think it was something during my career that I suffered a lot with injuries. So I saw not just the playing side of football. Excuse me. I didn't just see the football playing side of football. I saw the other side of it, so the physiotherapy side of it, the sort of commercial side of it as well, because while I was out injured, I did a lot of commercial stuff for the football club I was at. So it was visiting schools and doing sponsorship events and stuff like that. So I sort of saw football from a holistic point of view, really, not just the playing football side, and sort of the coaching side of it really interested me and stuff. So, and I think for any young player and any football player, if you can start getting into the coaching side of it while you're playing, you see a different perspective of the game and stuff. So for me, it was always intrigued me, different aspects of football, not just the playing side of it. Yeah,
I always thought that if you sort of get into coaching as a player, it can help your game as well, I suppose, because like you said, the perspective. Do you think that's the case, Neil, for like any young sort of players sort of thinking, okay, I'm not sure if I should do my badges or my coaching license, and in terms of
because I think a lot of the times they used to say, just because you was a good footballer doesn't make you a successful manager, which is a key in some parts. But I think as a young player, I think if you can learn football, not just from a playing point of view, but it might help you tactically, it might help you in to sort of manage the game on the pitch in terms of things aren't working out, let's change the formation. If you've got that sort of aspect in your mind of different, how it can work and how you can change it, then I think it is only a beneficiary as a footballer that you've got that sort of extra knowledge as well.
Absolutely, no, definitely. And I suppose also the confidence as well, and sort of communication. I think for players to be able to sort of build.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing to, as a manager and as a coach now of a first team, to be stood up in front of the players, and they've got your full attention, and you've got to give them information. You've got to give them expectations and the goals and responsibilities and roles of during the game. But if you're a player and you've got that confidence to know you've got that knowledge in your mind, that I think, again, it's only another string to your bow as a footballer if you've got that expectation of other players that that you've got of yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's also transferable outside the game too, sort of having the confidence to sort of, like you said, stand up and in front of sort of a group of players, and I suppose any age group, to be fair, and the spotlight's on. Definitely. And what would you say for yourself that the challenges have been sort of for your sort of getting to where you are, sort of in your own sort of career? I know you mentioned the injuries and other things as well, but what would you say for yourself that the barriers have been to getting there?
I just think it's the opportunity to, because a lot of things nowadays, it's not what you know, it's sort of what qualifications have you got now. For me, I don't need a piece of paper to say what kind of coach I am, but to go for a certain job or to go to the next level, you need to have this qualification and stuff like that. And the availability really of doing the qualifications isn't vastly available. So, I mean, I've been now for the last 2-3 years trying to get onto my A license, but because of there's only so many courses run a year, there's so many applications for it, it's a very difficult process to be able to go from one badge to the next to be able to progress your career. So for me, it's just the barriers really are the availability of being able to progress yourself. I mean, if it was an online course that you could do, or as a study program that you could do in your own time, and then you have to do maybe a qualification or a presentation or a training session to get your qualification, then I think that would be more availability for players or coaches to be able to progress quickly in their career. But it's just difficult to be able to access courses to progress my qualifications.
Absolutely. I've sort of spoken to coaches who sort of mentioned similar things before, and it's one of them really. Obviously, there's only so many hours a day and so many other things to do, and it's not always accessible, that's for sure. And like you mentioned there, I mean, what's your take on it, Neil, in terms of, I mean, I've had the discussion many a time with people, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of, good players, good coaches, or, what do you think the correlation is there? Because you see some players, for example, they may not have been, huge players in their career, but they've gone on to say, become. I mean, the obvious one that springs to mind. I'm not saying he's a bad player because obviously he had capability, but you take like a Jurgen Klopp, for example. Obviously players who achieved more than him who haven't done well in management, but he comparatively didn't. But what's your take on that in terms of how different is? Because you've seen both angles now.
Yeah, I've had this conversation quite a few times with sort of top managers now that are still managing in the Premier League and in the Championship, of players that have been world-class players or up at the elite level of playing that haven't been able to do it in management, and sort of what I can get from that, I think it's more of an expectation of what he could do that the players he's managing can't do, and it's a difficult transition to sort of get that quality or that expectation of what you want to do, what you did as a player, to how you want your players to play as players. I think it's difficult once you've been at that high elite level to manage anything below that, because they haven't got the capabilities that you had as a player. So I think that's the hardest transition. I think when you've got the managers that, like Jose Mourinho, Jurgen Klopp, that haven't played at the elite level, they've sort of studied the game, and probably gone into more depth of how I can get this out of players than a player that's played at elite level. To them, it's an expectation of, you should be able to do that because I can, or I could when I played, and the players I played with could do that, so why can't you? And I think it's just that transition, I think, between expectation and what you can actually get from players.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that, Neil. I think certainly people involved in football listening will sort of, and even not involved in football, will find that really interesting, to be fair. Because what sort of comes to mind when you mention that, you look at like some really high profile elite players who've gone into sort of management, and I suppose failing is probably too strong a word, but they haven't done sort of anywhere near probably that would have been expected, to be fair. I sort of with that sort of, we look at say the likes of
I think it's a big. sort of a man management thing as well. I think that's massive in football, and I think if you've got that ego and you've got that sort of CV behind you, the man management side of it might be a little bit difficult, because you think, well, I managed myself as a player, I knew what I wanted as a player, and you sort of lose that identity between, now I'm the manager, I need to care for the rest of the players, when as a player I just cared about myself and knew what I had to do. And so I think, yes, it's transition really between the man management side of it as well. It's
definitely
difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's a whole different. I suppose, like you have a role as a coach, but also as a manager too. So yourself, Neil, are you sort of hands-on as well, like in coaching and management?
Yeah, I do. With my assistant, I'm always on the training ground, because at the end of the day, I'm a football person. I'm not somebody that's had a previous job and then got my coaching badge and thought, oh, I'll try my hand at coaching. So it's always something that I like to be on the grass. I like to be out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good cohesion between the players and the manager, that I'm always there, and they can see on a daily basis my points of what we need to do, how we need to get them across, instead of the assistant coach or doing it during the week and then me coming in on a match day. This is what I expect. I think these players need continuity in terms of what we're doing during the week, and how does that reflect on a match day on a Saturday. Yeah,
no, that's really interesting. Yeah, definitely. I suppose, like you said, with yourself having the background and being a footballer, sort of being out there, and I suppose you can look at watch training and see how things are going and monitor that. But
But I've had it through my career as well, so I've used good and bad experiences of my career. I've worked under managers that didn't really get involved in the coaching side of it. But I've also worked with managers that were constantly on the coaching side of it, and so I've sort of tried to pick out good bits from managers, bad bits from managers, what I've learned in the past, and tried to just basically implement that into my coaching style and philosophy.
Just out of interest, as a player, I know you can't speak for every player because everyone's different, but what's the sort of general preference that the players or yourself, like from a playing point of view, prefer a manager that's sort of out there, hands-on, or does it matter to players? I know every player's going to have a different take on it, but from your perspective,
and that's a big thing as well. It's not just what the group need as a team; it's what individuals need, and you need to learn and study and take time to learn about each individual player, because like you said before, everybody works differently. I've played with players that if they're not getting shouted at, then they don't feel like they're getting enough from the manager, but other players who don't like to be shouted at, who needs an arm around them, so every player will react different to a manager. So I always find it vitally important in my role now that I need to learn what makes each individual player tick, and at half time, if some players made a mistake and it's cost us a goal or it's cost us a chance or something, I need to know how I need to manage that player to get the best out of him in the second half. So if I know he needs a right good telling off at half time and shouting off and embarrassing in front of everyone else, which will then get a reaction for him to go out and do something, that's what I have to do. But other players won't react to that, they'll just switch off. And I used to be a player that if a manager came in shouting and bawling at me at half time, I'd just switch off and I'd just think, I'm not even listening to you, because I'm frustrated by myself. I know what I've done wrong. I don't need you in front of everyone to be like that. So that's sort of the part of the management role that I take up is the man management side. I think that's a key, massively important to get the best out of your group of players as individuals and as a team.
Definitely get the players sort of playing, get them on your side. And sort of for yourself, Neil, sort of highlights. So we sort of talked about challenges in sort of your, obviously you got a long career ahead of you, but up to this point, what would you say some of your highlights have been for you?
In terms of playing or managing?
I suppose a bit of both.
Just in general.
Yeah, just in general. Yeah,
I think obviously every kid has a dream of becoming a professional footballer, and I saw something the other day that somebody posted that only 1% of kids make it as a professional footballer. So
Even
I'm
less,
proud
yeah.
that I'm in that 1%. Now, whether I played enough as many games as I should have due to injury or this or that, or fully reached my potential of where I should have been, or at the end of the day I have still had that made my dream come true, and that's through hard work and dedication and commitment as from a young age. So I'm proud of the fact that I'm in that small percentage of people that have made it into professional football. So really, I think making your debut, walking into the changing room, seeing your shirt with your name on the back and hearing fans sing your name, I think that's, for me, that's the pinnacle really of what I've wanted to achieve as a player. Now as a coach or a manager is developing these young players that we've got in the academy here. So I'm the academy manager here at Farsley as well. So seeing the progress of these young players that come in at 16, 15, 16, for when they leave the programme at 18, 19, that they've reached where they need to be. And luckily for me, I've had I think there's 8 now, 8 from the academy and under 23s that have now played first team football this year. So I think a big proud thing of me as a manager is seeing the progression of players and reaching and getting them to their full potential as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, it must be a buzz to see the younger players, coming through. And in terms of, just for our listeners, Farsley, sort of give us an insight in terms of the club itself, Neil, if it's sort of okay, just a bit of what sort of.
Yeah, so we're probably the second biggest team in Leeds. So obviously you've got Leeds United that are a professional club. We're probably the biggest semi-professional club. So we're a part-time team. We train twice a week, play on Saturday. We play in the National League North, which is 2 below the League 2. So we're 2 leagues below the professional football pyramid. So we're in terms of our league, we're probably one of the small clubs in our league. Some teams in our league are full-time, so we're obviously competing against teams that are full-time and got bigger budgets and have bigger crowds and stuff like that. But as a club, we know where we are, and I wouldn't say overachieving as a club because we're not. But when you look at the size of other clubs in our league, then we are competing with bigger clubs. But in terms of the club, it's a well-run club. It's a very family-orientated club. So it's a great club to be around.
Yeah, and in terms of sort of obviously it's you've got your goals and sort of vision of sort of going forward, but for yourself, I sense that sort of bringing through young players is sort of important to you, and sort of building a team all the way through to that sort of youth level and getting young players through and sort of playing. And I mean, we know fans really enjoy seeing sort of young players come through and players coming through the system. Really, for yourself, Neil, where do you sort of see things going there? Is it just keep building what you've done so far, or?
Yeah, I think it's about building and getting that reputation of allowing young players to come in, express themselves, work on the game, and then also giving them the end goal at the end of it, because the process that some players go through at professional clubs is you're the next best thing, this and that, and then it doesn't quite work out, and it's right, see you later, thanks very much, we'll bring in the next one and we'll sell him the dream as well. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and you've got to be there to pick them pieces up and give these players the opportunity to say, look, it's not over yet, but we need to do this and this, and there's still an opportunity for you. So I think it's important to be that sort of cushion for these players that don't quite make it at a professional club, and give them the realisation of it. It's not the end of your dream. You just need you need people that are going to invest time in you, and which at a professional club, and in all fairness, they haven't got that time and opportunity to say, well, we'll give you an extra year or an extra couple of years, see how your development goes, because it's a process that professional clubs have to go through, and if they're not hitting the targets there and then they haven't really got the got the time to spend with these kids, which is where we come in. Then we take them and give them another couple of years development in the under 21s and under 23s.
Okay, yeah.
And then build them up to first team level.
Yeah. So with you guys, you've got the under 21s, the under 23s as well. So there's the opportunity, say, if a player gets released from a professional club to sort of Yeah,
so our setup here, we've got an under 16s that play in the Junior Premier League, which is a pre-academy group.
Yeah.
And then we've got an academy, which does the 16 to 19s. And then from there, they can progress into the under 21s, under 23s, and then into the first team. So from the age of 15, players can see the pathways that they've got from age of 15 right the way up into the first team. And we've had players that have played in the first team this year that are still 16, 17.
Yeah. And the 16s to 19s, are they full time, Neil? Or are they sort of?
Yeah, they're full time. So they're in Monday to Friday every day. They'll do education and football on site, so everything's down at the ground. So we've got classrooms and analysis rooms and stuff.
Brilliant.
At the training ground. So they're in full time, and then the first team are in twice a week training. And
and like just out of interest, the sort of 16s to 19s in terms of the full time. Do you guys get the opportunity to play against sort of pro clubs as well? Or?
Yeah, so obviously during the COVID period, the last couple of years has been difficult. Because obviously protocols of getting players in and out has been difficult. But yeah, we have had sort of showcase games against Leeds United and Rotherham, Barnsley, all local professional clubs, and they've taken a few of our players on trial and stuff like that. So we have got a good sort of connection with all the professional clubs. So
do you find you guys can find you can sort of compete against the Leeds? I mean, obviously Leeds are Premiership club. How do you find that sort of that the players at that age group? Obviously, it's about development, but do you in terms
it's you can see that these players at the professional clubs are a little bit more advanced in their development and their understanding of the game. But it's always a good competitive game. It's not. I don't think we've ever been beaten by a big high score that people will look and think, geez, they're miles off. But you're always going to compete against teams and players that are that slightly bit more advanced technically and
absolutely. I mean, the resources obviously a Premiership club has got and professional clubs. But I suppose for the players that have the opportunity, Neil, to be in full time, I think that's sort of great. It sort of gives them the opportunity to study and who knows really in terms of in terms of being a professional, you've got to be in it to sort of stand the chance really. So but it's opportunities, isn't it? It's making sure you're at the right club that are willing to give the opportunities, and some clubs are, some clubs aren't. Yeah, and there's that sort of pathway. And just out of it, what your thoughts? I think you've got this sort of sort of vast experience on sort of different levels in terms of playing and sort of coaching and in the non-league. What would you say in terms of the sort of for a player if they get the opportunity to play first team non-league? It's like I always thought it's a great opportunity for a player to play first team wherever you are really. In terms of
if we've had players that sort of got released from professional clubs at sort of 14, 15, and then now they're sort of getting back onto the ladder now because they're playing competitive under 23s first team football at this level, and it's always better for a club to see on your CV that you've had one season playing at National League level and stuff like that than a player that's just been at an academy and played under 18s or under 19s football. It just adds that little bit more extra that a club might think, well, if you can compete at that level and do it at that level, then it's not much of a step up really from our level up to League 2, League 1.
And which we sort of see in some of the FA Cup runs as well. You kind of see, the non-league teams give some of the pro teams, beat them sometimes, obviously. So it goes to show.
Reading. We played Kidderminster on Tuesday night, but they played Reading in the FA Cup and beat them on Saturday.
That's right,
and then we played them on Tuesday night and they beat us 2-1. But it was a very close game, so you can sort of see that the levels, there's not much in between apart from the odd individual players or in the teams.
No, definitely. That's and I suppose that they've got that sort of clear pathway. For a player, obviously players they want to play at the highest level possible, most of them, if that's an opportunity comes up. But in one sense, sort of, the setup you have, and it gives players a realistic chance to sort of, if they're willing to put their head down and work hard, to maybe stand the chance. But do you also find when players do get released, Neil, sometimes they might underestimate the level as well?
Yeah, they do. I mean, we've got a couple of players at the moment that are on loan from sort of football league clubs, and I spoke to them, and they said they didn't realise how actually hard it was and competitive it was, because it is men's football. It is, players are playing and getting paid, so it's more competitive, I think, than people take credit for.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so sort of not just the case of being sort of released and sort of and stepping into a non-league team, and it's sort of tough. And we've seen obviously a lot in years gone by. There's been plenty of high-profile players who've gone into non-league, and some have done well, some have sort of struggled for various reasons. But absolutely, sort of no walk in the park, that's for sure. But I suppose on the final note, Neil, one of the sort of questions I ask a lot of the guests are, if you sort of were going to, and hard to give advice obviously, but sort of any sort of tips to any young player coming through. I mean, there's probably no better person than yourself to sort of maybe share a bit of wisdom in terms of you got like a 6, 17, 18-year-old making their way in the game, or if you could sort of speak to younger self, what sort of thoughts would you say, Neil?
I always say to players, ability is only 10% of what it takes to make a professional footballer. Everything else around it has got to be right. So the other 90% is your hard work, your dedication, your commitment, your desire, your heart. All of them aspects are more important than your ability. Your ability will only get you so far. Or if coaches say, he's a good player, but never turns up on time, he's lazy when he's around the training ground, he doesn't really do this, doesn't really do that, that'll catch up with you in time, and you'll start building a reputation. So for me, it's vitally important for any young player that don't just focus on the ability side of it. They have to focus on everything else, that your DNA of a professional footballer, and work on every single aspect of that.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout, and sort of certainly any young players listening to that, that's sort of a take-home message where I think, certainly I think sometimes players hear about players who might not be putting it in and that sort of stuff, but every player to get there will have, like you said, worked immensely hard, and staying there's another thing. But that's sort of, I think, a big take-home message for a young player, thinking if you give anything less than over 100%, then you're probably not going to get there, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that's been great speaking to you, Neil. It's been really informative and educational, really. I'm sure our listeners have sort of taken, irrespective of whether they play football or any sport, really, have sort of taken away a lot from there. So I want to thank you for coming aboard the show. It's been great speaking to you, and wish yourself.
It's been brilliant, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thanks, Neil. So we wish Neil Ross and Farsley Celtic FC all the best for the season. If you're very kind enough to join us on the Salford City Friday Sports Show, 94.5 FM, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.